First contact's price. The Zarkak surveillance vessel drifted silently through the asteroid field, its advanced stealth systems rendering it virtually invisible against the backdrop of space. Senior observer Teklan stood at his post, his four eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing an unusual anomaly in what should have been empty space. Magnification increase, he ordered softly, his voice barely above a whisper despite the fact that sound couldn't travel through the vacuum of space. Old habits died hard, especially for a species that evolved as prey animals. The image zoomed in on what appeared to be a crude mining operation, a single station, and what his sensors identified as a primitive drilling vessel. Humans, his second-in-command Valsha, said with a mix of curiosity and contempt. This far out in disputed space, they barely achieved FTL travel 2 decades ago. Teklan's upper eyes narrowed while his lower pair continued monitoring the sensor readings. The humans were supposed to be contained within their designated expansion zone, as per Galactic Federation guidelines. Their presence here was technically a violation of at least 3 different treaties, yet something about the situation felt wrong. Why would they send such a primitive operation into contested space? He mused aloud. Look at that mining vessel. Chemical propulsion, visible viewport, exposed drilling apparatus. It's practically asking to be destroyed. The mining vessel in question was approaching a particularly large asteroid, its form ungainly against the backdrop of space. Unlike the sleek, organic shapes preferred by most spacefaring races, this human ship was all hard angles and exposed machinery. 4 massive drill heads protruded from its front, looking more like ancient mechanical tools than modern mining equipment. Should we signal the fleet? Valsha asked, her hand hovering over the communications array. No, Teklan decided. Let's observe first. Something about this doesn't add up. The human vessel made contact with the asteroid's surface, and Teklan's sensor officer let out a startled chirp. The readings coming from the drill heads defied everything they knew about mining operations. Instead of the standard molecular disassembly beams used by Federation races, these crude-looking drills were somehow pulverizing the asteroid's material into precisely sized particles while simultaneously sorting and processing them. Impossible, the sensor officer muttered, running the scan again. The energy efficiency ratings, they're better than our best mining platforms. Teklan felt his neck frills rise in surprise. Explain. The humans are using some sort of mechanical revolution principle combined with what appears to be. The officer paused, double-checking his readings. Gravitational manipulation at a quantum level. They're not just breaking down the material. They're sorting it at the atomic level during the extraction process itself. The bridge fell silent as they watched the human vessel burrow into the asteroid like some sort of mechanical worm. Their sensors tracked its progress through the rock, watching as it processed and sorted materials with an efficiency that should have been impossible with such primitive-looking technology. Look at the waste heat signatures, Valsha pointed out. There barely are any. How are they managing thermal displacement at that scale without radiators? Before anyone could theorize, the mining vessel emerged from the other side of the asteroid, its cargo holds noticeably fuller. But it wasn't until they witnessed what happened next that Teklan truly understood why this discovery would change everything. The human vessel deployed what initially appeared to be a simple probe into the tunnel it had created. Moments later, their sensors detected a localized gravitational anomaly that caused the entire asteroid to collapse in on itself, condensing its mass into a fraction of its original size. The mining vessel then proceeded to collect the compressed remains with almost casual efficiency. By the first light, Teklan breathed. They've weaponized gravity itself for mining purposes. The implications were staggering. The Federation had been treating humans as primitive newcomers to galactic society, barely worth noting except as a potential security concern. Their ships looked crude. Their methods appeared primitive, and their technology seemed centuries behind the galactic standard. But watching this primitive mining operation, Teklan was beginning to understand a fundamental truth about humans that the Federation had missed. They didn't think like other species, where the Federation had pursued molecular manipulation and energy-based mining solutions for millennia, humans had apparently taken basic physical principles and refined them to an art form. The mining vessel returned to its station, and the observers watched in fascinated horror as the primitive facility demonstrated yet another impossible feat. What they had assumed to be simple storage tanks began processing the extracted materials using what appeared to be a water-based separation system, combined with artificial gravity manipulation. The efficiency readings were off the charts. "Send a priority message to Central Command," Teclan ordered, his voice grave. "Classification level Alpha. The humans haven't violated the treaties by accident. They're not here because they're primitive and don't know better." He paused, watching as the station began transforming raw ore into refined materials at a rate that rivaled Federation mega-facilities. "They're here because they're so far ahead in certain technologies that our treaties mean nothing to them." As if to punctuate his point, the station deployed what appeared to be a manufacturing array, a technology that the Federation had been struggling to perfect for centuries. They watched in stunned silence as it began assembling the ship from the freshly refined materials, component by component, with precision that their best shipyards couldn't match. "What do we do now?" Valsha asked quietly. Teclan considered the question carefully. The humans had revealed, probably unknowingly, that they possessed technological capabilities that could revolutionize, or destabilize, the entire Federation. Their seemingly primitive approach masked innovations that solved problems his people had struggled with for generations. "Now," he said finally, "we have to decide whether to treat them as the threat everyone fears they might be, or as the allies we desperately need them to be." He watched as the newly constructed ship's engines came online, its design unlike anything in Federation records. "And we have to do it before the rest of the Federation realizes what we've discovered here." The observation ship maintained its silence, watching as the humans continued their work, blissfully unaware that their primitive operation had just changed the course of galactic history. In the darkness of space, Teclan wondered if his people were ready for what would come next. The humans weren't just different. They were dangerous in their brilliance, and that made them either the Federation's greatest threat or its greatest hope. The first contact's true price, he realized, wouldn't be measured in credits or resources, but in how much the galaxy would have to change to accommodate a species that had mastered the art of making the impossible look primitive. The impossible math. The grand archives of the Galactic Federation stretched across an entire artificial moon, its crystalline towers housing the accumulated knowledge of over 10,000 species. Dr. Ixel Valturin, chief theoretical engineer of the Federation Science Council, had practically lived in these archives for the past 3 cycles, ever since the classified reports from the Zarkak's observation vessel arrived. She moved her serpentine form through the holographic displays, her scales reflecting the soft blue light of countless data streams. The equations floating before her seemed to mock everything she'd learned in her 2 centuries of scientific study. "Run the simulation again," she commanded, her forked tongue flicking in agitation. The AI complied, and once more she watched the recorded footage of the human mining vessel at work. The numbers didn't lie, but they also couldn't be true. "Dr. Valturin," a voice called from the archive entrance. "The Council is waiting." She coiled herself tighter, a sign of stress among her species. "Tell them I need more time. These calculations. They've received word that 3 more human mining operations have been discovered in different sectors," the aide interrupted. "We don't have more time." The journey to the council chambers was brief, but it gave Ixel time to organize her thoughts. The circular chamber was already full when she arrived. Representatives from the Federation's most powerful species gathered to hear her findings. She noted the Zarkak's observer, Teclan, sitting quietly in one corner. "Dr. Valturin," High Counselor Maxstar began, his crystalline form glowing with barely contained energy. "Your preliminary report has caused considerable concern. Please explain to the full council what you've discovered about the human mining technology." Ixel projected her data into the center of the chamber. "What we're seeing shouldn't be possible," she began. The humans have somehow merged three theoretical approaches that we've always considered mutually exclusive. The hologram showed the human drilling mechanism in detail. First, they're using purely mechanical force, essentially rotating teeth made of hardened materials. Primitive, by our standards. But they've combined this with localized quantum field manipulation and gravitational control at a scale our best theories say shouldn't work. Explain the implications, another counselor demanded. The implications. Ixel's scales shifted color slightly. They've solved the Cranach equation. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Cranach equation, named after a long-dead mathematician, had puzzled Federation scientists for millennia. It suggested a theoretical way to manipulate gravity at a quantum level, but every attempt to put it into practice had failed catastrophically. That's not possible, one of the senior scientists objected. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical using our methods, Ixel agreed. But the humans aren't using our methods. They've approached it from an entirely different direction. Instead of trying to brute force quantum manipulation like we've always done, they're using mechanical rotation to create a cascading resonance effect. The physical drill bits aren't just breaking up rock. They're creating a quantum gravitational field that makes the material want to break apart at an atomic level. She brought up more data streams. Their entire approach defies our basic assumptions about technology. We've spent thousands of years trying to overcome physical limitations through pure energy manipulation. The humans instead work with those limitations, using them to achieve effects we thought impossible. But they're so primitive, another counselor protested. Their ships still use chemical propulsion in atmosphere. They haven't even mastered basic telepathic communication. With respect, Teclan spoke up from his corner. I believe we fundamentally misunderstood what primitive means in this context. The Zarkak's observer moved to the center of the chamber. We've been judging human technology by our standards, expecting them to follow the same developmental path we did. They haven't. Ixel nodded in agreement. Look at their manufacturing process. The hologram shifted to show the station's assembly system. We've spent centuries trying to perfect matter-energy conversion for manufacturing. The humans instead developed what they call adaptive robotics. Those mechanical arms can perform millions of different tasks with micron-level precision. They're not using exotic energy fields or molecular reconstructors. They're just using incredibly sophisticated physical manipulation. And it's more efficient than our methods, she continued. Their system uses barely a fraction of the energy our manufacturing platforms require, with almost zero waste material. They're achieving post-scarcity manufacturing capabilities through mechanical means, while we're still struggling to do it with pure energy manipulation. The council chamber erupted in concerned discussion. Ixel could understand their worry. The Federation's technological superiority was one of its main unifying forces. The discovery that a supposedly primitive species had developed alternative solutions to problems they'd struggled with for millennia was deeply unsettling. There's more, she added, causing the chamber to fall silent again. Their gravitational compression technology. They're not just using it for mining. Every human ship we've observed carries at least one of these devices. We initially thought they were just mining tools, but they're weapons. Teclan finished. Incredibly powerful ones. A single human mining vessel could theoretically compress an entire capital ship into a sphere the size of a transport pod. They'd been sitting on this capability since they entered Federation space, and we never realized it because we assumed their technology was primitive. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. A species they'd dismissed as newcomers had developed technological capabilities that could revolutionize, or devastate, the Federation's economy and military balance. What do they want? High Counselor Maxtar asked finally. Why reveal these capabilities now? I don't believe they meant to reveal anything, Ixel responded. This is just how they do things. They're not trying to hide their capabilities or show them off. They're simply using the tools they've developed in the way that seems most natural to them. And that's perhaps the most concerning part, she continued. We've seen only a fraction of their technological capabilities, and only in the context of mining and manufacturing. If they've developed such revolutionary approaches in these areas, what other surprises might they be hiding? Not out of malice, but simply because they found different solutions than we did. The council chamber erupted in debate, but Ixel noticed Teclan nodding slowly in agreement. The Zarkak's observer caught her eye and moved closer. "There's something else troubling you," he said quietly. Ixel glanced at her calculations one more time. "Yes," she admitted. "All of this, their mining technology, their manufacturing capabilities, their gravitational manipulation, it's impressive, revolutionary even. But I can't shake the feeling that we're still missing something. These advances, they feel like side effects of some greater understanding we haven't grasped yet. You think they're more advanced than even these discoveries suggest?" "I think," Ixel said carefully, "that we're still thinking about their technology in our terms. And if there's one thing these humans have proven, it's that they don't think like we do. What else might they have developed, simply because they never realized it was supposed to be impossible?" As the council continued to debate humanity's place in the Federation, Ixel turned her attention back to the equations floating before her. Somewhere in the impossible math of human innovation lay answers to questions her people had never even thought to ask. The real question was whether the Federation was ready for those answers. Necessity's children. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the Federation diplomatic station, watching the swirl of alien ships moving through space. Behind her, the Federation's diplomatic team was still reeling from her presentation on the history of human technological development. "Let me understand this correctly," High Diplomat Vexry said, his crystalline form vibrating with what Sarah had learned to recognize as confusion. "Your species developed quantum gravitational manipulation technology while mining your ocean floors. Specifically, we developed it while trying to prevent underwater mining platforms from collapsing under extreme pressure," Sarah corrected. "When you're drilling at depths of 10 kilometers underwater, you learn a lot about managing gravitational and pressure forces." She turned from the viewport to face the assembled diplomats. The chamber was designed to accommodate dozens of species, with environments ranging from standard atmosphere to liquid methane. Sarah had spent months learning to read their alien expressions, but even she was surprised by the mix of shock and disbelief she saw now. "But why start there?" asked Dr. Valtorin, the Federation's chief theoretical engineer who had been brought in as a technical advisor. "Your species had barely mastered nuclear fission when you began deep-sea mining operations. The technological leap seems reckless." Sarah smiled. "That's humanity for you. We needed resources, and they were there. The fact that getting them seemed impossible just meant we had to get creative." She gestured to the holographic display, which showed the evolution of human mining technology. "We couldn't generate enough energy to brute force our way through problems like more advanced civilizations do. We had to work smarter, not harder. Every solution had to be energy efficient, because we simply couldn't waste power when working at those depths." The display shifted to show early deep-sea mining operations. "These platforms taught us that traditional drilling methods weren't efficient enough. The pressures at those depths would destroy conventional equipment. So we started experimenting with rotary gravitational fields to reduce stress on the drilling equipment. It was crude at first, just trying to create localized areas of reduced pressure so our drills wouldn't shatter. But that should have caused catastrophic underwater implosions," one of the Federation scientists interjected. "It did, at first," Sarah acknowledged. "We lost 3 platforms before we figured out how to create stable gravitational fields. But each failure taught us something new about how gravity interacted with matter at a quantum level. We weren't approaching it as theoretical physics. We were just trying to solve practical problems." She brought up another display, this one showing the early prototypes of what would become their modern mining technology. "By the time we reached space, we had already solved most of the fundamental problems your scientists are still struggling with. Not because we're smarter, but because we had no choice. We needed those resources, and we had to find ways to get them with the limited energy and technology we had available. And the manufacturing systems? Dr. Valtorin asked. The adaptive robotics. Sarah laughed. Would you believe that started with prosthetic limbs? We needed artificial limbs that could adapt to different tasks without needing to be replaced. One of our scientists was watching her daughter play with an old toy, something called a Rubik's Cube, and realized that mechanical adaptation could be achieved through physical reconfiguration rather than energy-intensive molecular reconstruction. The display showed the evolution of human robotics, from crude prosthetics to the sophisticated manufacturing arrays that had so impressed the Federation. Again, we couldn't waste energy. Every solution had to be efficient, reliable, and repairable with limited resources. The same principles that let us create adaptive prosthetic limbs eventually led to our manufacturing technology. But the gravitational compression weapons, Teklin spoke up from his corner. The Zarkax observer had been quietly watching the presentation. Surely those weren't developed for mining. Actually, they were, Sarah replied. We needed a way to compress processed ore for transport from the deep-sea platforms. Energy was limited, and traditional compression methods weren't efficient enough. The fact that the technology could be weaponized was a secondary discovery. She could see the Federation representatives struggling with these concepts. Their civilization had developed through careful, methodical scientific advancement, always building on established principles. The idea of developing revolutionary technology, simply because it was the only solution available, seemed to disturb them. There's something else you need to understand about humanity, Sarah continued. We don't see limitations the way you do. When we encounter a problem, we don't ask whether solving it is theoretically possible. We just start trying solutions until something works, even if those solutions defy established physical laws. Dr. Valtorin asked. Especially then, Sarah smiled. Half our major technological breakthroughs came from people who either didn't know something was impossible or refused to believe it when they were told. We had to reach the stars with the resources we had, not the ones we wished we had. She brought up one final display, showing Earth. Our world shaped us. High gravity, deep oceans, extreme weather, limited easily accessible resources. Everything about our evolution taught us to adapt, to find creative solutions, to never accept that something was impossible, just because everyone said it was. And now, High Diplomat Vexery asked, what does humanity want from the Federation? Sarah turned back to the viewport, watching the dance of ships in space. We want what we've always wanted, to explore, to learn, to grow. Yes, our technology developed along different lines than yours. Yes, we've solved some problems that you're still struggling with. But I guarantee you've solved problems that we haven't even recognized yet. She faced the diplomatic team again. We're not here to compete with the Federation or to prove our superiority. We're here because space is vast and challenges are infinite. Maybe it's time we started sharing solutions instead of worrying about who developed them first. The chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. Sarah could see the moment when understanding began to dawn in their alien expressions. Humanity wasn't a threat to the Federation's technological superiority. They were a reminder that there was always another way to solve a problem. One last question, Dr. Valtorin said. Your mining vessels, the ones we observed, they look primitive, deliberately so, almost. Sarah's smile widened slightly. Let me ask you something. If you were developing revolutionary technology that could change the balance of power in the galaxy, would you put it in ships that looked advanced? Or would you hide it in vessels so seemingly primitive that no one would look twice at them? The silence that followed was profound. Sarah could see the Federation representatives reassessing every encounter they'd had with humanity, wondering what other innovations might be hiding behind seemingly primitive facades. We are necessity's children, she concluded. Every problem we've solved, every innovation we've developed, came from having no choice but to find a solution. That's not going to change just because we've reached the stars. The only question is whether the Federation wants to face the universe's challenges with us, or watch from a distance as we keep solving the impossible. As the diplomatic team began their discussions, Sarah turned back to the viewport. Somewhere out there, human mining vessels were still at work, looking primitive and unassuming. She wondered how long it would take the Federation to realize that everything they'd discovered so far was just the beginning of what humanity could do when faced with necessity. The Exchange, the Federation's premier research station, nexus of understanding, had never seen such chaos. Teams of human and alien scientists crowded its laboratories, each group struggling to understand the other's approach to technology. Dr. Marcus Wong watched with amusement as a group of Federation engineers attempted to disassemble a standard human mining drill, their expressions growing more confused by the minute. No, you're thinking about it backwards again, he said, moving to help them. Stop trying to find the quantum field generator. There isn't one. The gravitational effect is created by the physical rotation of the drill heads themselves. Across the lab, Dr. Val Torin was engaged in equally frustrated attempts to explain Federation power distribution systems to a team of human engineers. Her scales had taken on a distinctly frazzled pattern. The energy doesn't need to be contained in physical conduits, she was saying. The field itself acts as the transmission medium. But what happens if the field collapses? One of the human engineers asked. At least with physical conduits, you can repair the break. Marcus smiled as he heard the familiar back and forth. It had been like this for weeks now, ever since the technology exchange program began. Two technological traditions, each highly advanced in their own way, struggling to understand how the other could possibly work. His comm unit buzzed. Dr. Wong, your presence is requested in Lab 7. There's been an incident. He found Lab 7 in disarray. A human-designed manufacturing array had been partially integrated with a Federation molecular reconstructor. The hybrid device was currently spinning out of control, its mechanical arms flailing as they tried to adapt to the exotic energy fields flowing through them. Who authorized this test? He demanded, already reaching for the emergency shutdown controls. I did, came a familiar voice. Ambassador Chen stepped into the lab, followed by High Diplomat Vexry. We need to prove that integration is possible. Marcus gestured at the malfunctioning hybrid. With all due respect, Ambassador, this isn't the way to do it. You can't just bolt our systems onto theirs and expect them to work together. Then show us the right way, Vexry said. His crystalline form pulsed with what Marcus had learned to recognize as intense interest. Your species has demonstrated a remarkable ability to solve problems in unexpected ways. Perhaps this integration challenge requires a similar approach. Marcus studied the hybrid device as the shutdown sequence completed. The Federation's molecular reconstruction technology was incredible, capable of rearranging matter at the atomic level with pure energy manipulation. But it was also incredibly power-hungry and prone to catastrophic failure if the energy fields fluctuated even slightly. Human manufacturing systems, on the other hand, used precisely controlled mechanical movements and minimal energy input. They were slower than Federation technology, but far more reliable and efficient. We're approaching this wrong, he said finally. We're trying to force two fundamentally different technologies to act like each other. Instead, we should be looking for ways to let each system do what it does best. He moved to the main design terminal and began sketching out a new configuration. Look, what if we use the Federation's molecular reconstruction for the fine detail work, the things that actually need atomic-level manipulation, but we handle the bulk of the manufacturing with our mechanical systems? The energy requirements would still be, one of the Federation scientists began, would be significantly reduced because we're only using molecular reconstruction where it's actually needed, Marcus interrupted. And our mechanical systems can be powered by the waste energy from your processes. It's not about making one system conform to the other. It's about finding the sweet spot where they complement each other. Ambassador Chen moved closer to study his design. Can you make it work? Give me a week, and a team that's willing to think differently," he replied. The next 7 days were a blur of activity. Marcus assembled a mixed team of human and Federation engineers, carefully choosing those who had shown the most ability to think outside their traditional paradigms. They worked around the clock, testing different configurations and integration methods. There were setbacks, of course. 3 prototype systems failed spectacularly. One failure nearly breached the lab's containment fields. But with each failure, they learned more about how the two technologies could work together. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the younger Federation engineers, inspired by watching a human child's toy in the station's civilian section, suggested using mechanical feedback from the human systems to help stabilize the Federation's energy fields. "It's like a gyroscope," she explained excitedly. "The physical motion of the manufacturing arms creates a steady rhythm that we can use to modulate the molecular reconstruction fields." The final prototype was ugly by both human and Federation standards, a mess of mechanical arms and energy field projectors that looked like it had been assembled by a mad scientist. But when they activated it for the first time, it worked better than anyone had expected. The hybrid system combined the speed and precision of Federation molecular reconstruction with the efficiency and reliability of human mechanical manufacturing. It used less than a quarter of the energy of a standard Federation system while maintaining higher precision than either technology could achieve alone. "Remarkable," High Diplomat Vexry said, watching the hybrid system construct complex components from raw materials. "But why did it take humans to show us this was possible?" "Because we're used to working with limitations," Marcus explained. "Federation technology always aims for the perfect solution, even if it requires enormous energy input. We learned to look for the good enough solution that we could actually implement with the resources we had. And sometimes," Ambassador Chen added, "the good enough solution turns out to be better than the perfect one." As word of the successful integration spread through the station, Marcus noticed a subtle shift in how the various research teams interacted. The initial friction between human and Federation approaches began to give way to genuine curiosity about what they could learn from each other. But not everyone was pleased with this development. Marcus caught glimpses of worried conversations among some of the more conservative Federation scientists. He understood their concern. The hybrid technology threatened to upend centuries of established Federation technical doctrine. "They're afraid," Dr. Val Torin told him privately. "Not of humans, specifically, but of change. Our technological development has followed the same paths for so long that the idea of finding completely different solutions is unsettling." "Change is always unsettling," Marcus replied. "But it's also inevitable. The real question is whether we face it together or let it drive us apart." As he watched human and Federation engineers working together to refine the hybrid system, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what other possibilities might emerge from this collaboration. They had proven that different approaches to technology could not only coexist but enhance each other. The next challenge would be convincing everyone else in the galaxy that this was a good thing. Greater than the sum. The warning came from a human mining vessel in the Carina sector. A routine gravitational scan had detected something that shouldn't have been possible, a cascade of quantum fluctuations rippling through subspace, threatening to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. The Federation's premier research station, Nexus of Understanding, transformed overnight from a place of careful scientific exploration to a crisis center. Dr. Marcus Wong stood before a holographic display of the affected region, watching as the anomaly grew larger with each passing hour. "It's our fault," Dr. Val Torin said quietly, her scales a muted gray of distress. "The Federation's been conducting high-energy matter transmission experiments in that sector for decades. We never considered the cumulative effect on subspace stability." Ambassador Chen studied the data streams with a frown. "How long until it reaches populated space?" 72 hours at current expansion rates, one of the Federation scientists reported. "When it does, the gravitational distortions will tear apart anything larger than a molecule. Ships, stations, planets. Everything in its path will be reduced to constituent atoms. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Millions of lives, both human and alien, lay in the path of the expanding anomaly. The Federation's energy-based technology had inadvertently created a threat that their same technology couldn't solve. Attempting to counter the anomaly with more energy would only accelerate the breakdown of spacetime. What about the human mining vessels? Teklen asked suddenly. The Zarkak's observer had been quietly watching the proceedings. Their gravitational manipulation technology works on different principles than ours. Marcus straightened, his mind racing. The mining drills create stable gravitational fields through mechanical rotation, rather than direct energy manipulation. If we could scale up the effect. You can't be serious, one of the Federation scientists objected. Those are mining tools. Not. Those mining tools manipulate gravity at a quantum level more efficiently than anything the Federation has developed. Dr. Valtorin interrupted. And right now, we need solutions, not objections. The next 48 hours were a blur of desperate activity. Human mining vessels were recalled from across the sector, their crews working alongside Federation scientists to modify their equipment for an unprecedented task. The hybrid manufacturing system they developed proved invaluable, allowing them to rapidly produce modified components that combined the best of both technological approaches. Marcus found himself working side by side with Dr. Valtorin, their different perspectives finally finding perfect harmony in the face of crisis. The Federation's understanding of quantum mechanics helped refine the human gravitational manipulation technology, while human practical experience helped make the theoretical solutions workable. It's ready, Marcus announced finally, looking at the modified mining vessel before them, or as ready as it's going to be. They had essentially turned the ship into a giant version of a mining drill's gravitational field generator. Federation energy technology powered the human-designed mechanical systems, creating a hybrid device that they hoped could stabilize the quantum fluctuations without making them worse. The math checks out, Dr. Valtorin said, though her scales showed uncertainty. But we've never attempted anything like this before. Story of human history, Marcus replied with a grim smile. We do impossible things because we have no choice. The modified vessel approached the edge of the anomaly, its hybrid systems humming with power. Federation sensors monitored every aspect of the operation, while human operators relied on their experience with gravitational manipulation to feel out the right approach. Beginning primary sequence, the ship's captain reported. The massive drill heads began to spin, but instead of grinding rock, they were weaving gravitational fields in patterns that had never been attempted before. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the sensors showed the impossible. The quantum fluctuations were starting to stabilize. The human technology's mechanical approach wasn't fighting against the anomaly like the Federation's energy-based solutions would have. Instead, it was essentially teaching space-time how to behave properly again, using principles that humans had discovered while trying to mine underwater resources on Earth. It's working, Dr. Valtorin whispered, her scales shifting to bright patterns of amazement. The gravitational fields are actually repairing the subspace damage. But their success was short-lived. As the ship pressed deeper into the affected region, the strain on its systems began to show. Warning alerts filled the command center as the hybrid technology struggled to contain forces it was never designed to handle. We need more power, the captain called out. The fields are starting to collapse. If we increase power output, the energy surge could make the anomaly worse, one of the Federation technicians warned. No, Marcus said suddenly, an idea forming. We don't need more power. We need more ships. He turned to Ambassador Chen. The mining vessels work in groups when handling large asteroids. They coordinate their gravitational fields to increase efficiency without increasing power consumption. Understanding dawned in the ambassador's eyes. How many ships do you need? All of them. What followed would be remembered as one of the most impressive displays of cooperation in galactic history. Every available human mining vessel was called in, their crews working with Federation scientists to coordinate their efforts. They formed a sphere around the anomaly, their modified drill heads spinning in precise synchronization. The sight was almost beautiful. Dozens of primitive human ships moving in perfect harmony, their technology working alongside Federation innovations to achieve something neither civilization could have managed alone. The gravitational fields they generated weren't just containing the anomaly. They were healing the damage to space-time itself. Hours passed in tense silence as the combined fleet worked. Slowly, steadily, the quantum fluctuations began to subside. The anomaly that had threatened to tear apart the sector shrank and finally collapsed in on itself, leaving behind only fading sensor readings and a profound sense of relief. As the crisis passed, Marcus found himself standing with Dr. Valtorin and Ambassador Chen, watching the fleet of mining vessels return to the station. "You know what this means, don't you?" Dr. Valtorin asked. "Everything we thought we knew about technological development, about the right way to solve problems. It's all going to change." "It already has," Ambassador Chen replied. "Look around." Marcus did. Throughout the station, human and Federation scientists were working together, their earlier rivalries forgotten in the wake of their shared triumph. The hybrid technology they'd developed had proven itself under the most extreme conditions, and new ideas for combining their different approaches were already being discussed. "We've always been necessity's children," Marcus said, echoing the ambassador's earlier words. "But maybe that's what the galaxy needed. People who look at impossible problems and see solutions nobody else imagined." "And now?" Teklen asked, joining them at the viewport. Marcus watched as human and Federation ships maneuvered together in space, no longer separated by technological boundaries or preconceptions about what was possible. "Now we build something greater than the sum of its parts," he said. "Together." As if to emphasize his words, a new ship emerged from the station's manufacturing bay. A vessel that combined Federation energy technology with human mechanical innovation. It looked neither primitive nor overly advanced, but something entirely new. Something that represented not just the future of human or Federation technology, but the future of what they could achieve together. The impossible, it seemed, was just the beginning.